No way they do this, as the Edmonton Oilers are yet again in speculation regarding a goaltender. The tale is old as time, and there's a potential swap in the future, according to Sportsnet's Nick Kypreos. But could it be a lateral move for the team? Could it just all be smoke and mirrors? We will get into that here on the channel today. Hope everybody's enjoying their day and the videos so far here on the channel. We had that game preview against the Dallas Stars, which we're still looking forward to tonight. And if you're enjoying the videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button for any and all Oiler news. Now let's get right into the latest on the Oilers in their goaltending from Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman regarding the Edmonton Oilers, to make a move. The pressure is on the team. I think internally the heat is really on. The owner, Daryl Katz, is a guy who puts a lot of pressure on the people he works with, and I think everyone's feeling it now. If they didn't feel it, before, they're feeling it now in year number 11 of Connor McDavid, still chasing that Stanley Cup there. So for the Oilers, they're trying to look at anything they can do. The cap is tight, but good teams, find a way to make things work. And enter the St. Louis Blues from TSN's Darren Dreger on his early trade talks, regarding the Blues. Doug Armstrong never leaves the Louisville Slugger on his shoulder. He always finds a way to swing that bat. It wouldn't surprise anyone if he does something of significance in the days ahead. And you're asking me, well, what do the St. Louis Blues have to do with this? Enter in Nick Kypreos' big trade board 1.0, an early look at who's available. The trade speculation, was sort of quiet during the month of October, and we're nearly through the second month of the season. American Thanksgiving, the litmus test on who's going to make the Stanley Cup playoffs, who's just going to completely bottom out this year, and that brings forward some big names. You can see there, Brayden Schenn, Nazem Kadri, Alex Tuck of the Buffalo Sabres. Steven Stamkos is the big fish on that one. But the last name I haven't mentioned yet is Jordan Binnington, and he is suspect number one for Nick Kypreos on his trade board. The season has been rough for St. Louis again, so the same speculation is kicking up. Statistically, Binnington has been one of the worst goalies in the league so far. Those stats, yeesh, 880 save percentage and a 3.13 goals against average, and although, his protege Joel Hofer hasn't been better, he is seen as the next man up in St. Louis. Binnington's 30 save, 2-1 win over the Islanders on Saturday. It was a reminder of how he can still get the job done, and teams looking at him will take notice of that. Now, I'm not, throwing any beef towards Jordan Binnington there. I think he's a great goalie when the lights are bright, but other than that, he's just been very inconsistent. We all remember the Four Nations face-off, the first three games, I should say, against, Sweden, Finland, in the USA. Everyone was sort of, going, okay, is he the answer? Is he, the best possible option in net? And then he proved us all wrong during the final there. So, when the stakes are the highest, he does get the job done, but, it's just the lead-up that sort of worries me to this point there. The save percentage and the goals against average, again, very, very worrisome, and Kypreos adding on with Jordan Binnington having one more season on his contract, in the sense is he won't be part of any rebuild, retool the Blues might undergo. The strongest speculation ties Jordan Binnington to Edmonton, and that the Oilers are also seeing if they can get a defenseman out of St. Louis at the same time. That potential deal would most likely be built around Stuart Skinner going back to St. Louis to team up with Hofer. Boy, I know there's a defenseman out of St. Louis I'd love to have back, but that's just me, throwing more salt on that old wound there, which is very interesting. Other than, the Binnington to Edmonds part, it's the defenseman part. The Oilers, again, very strapped for cash, but good teams find a way to make things work there. And the only, defenseman on that right side, it would be a right shot defenseman, right side defenseman that the Oilers would be targeting. And the only, I don't want to say useful, the only option that I can see in my mind, other than a guy like Justin Falk, is Colton Parayko. But with that cap hit and what the Oilers are trying to achieve right now, that's just not entirely doable unless, there's a depth defenseman, young defenseman that the Oilers are trying to target from the St. Louis Blues there, but obviously they're not going to give up that intel whatsoever there. Colton Parayko, in his heyday, way back, he was, a serviceable defenseman, and, with age, you certainly get a lot worse. It's the drop-off happens there, and he certainly did not impress me at all at the Four Nations face-off there. But Jordan Binnington, again, $6 million, expires at the end of the 2027 season. They're 32 years old, so again, wouldn't be a long-term option for the Edmonton Oilers. This would sort of just be, to get somebody in there that knows how to win the big games there with Jordan Binnington. But again, the stats so far this season, I just feel like it would be a much lateral move here, and I feel like the Oilers have to pay, a lot more than other teams if they're trying to trade for Jordan Binnington, just because, Doug Armstrong, he loves to stiff arm the Oilers, whether it be with Holloway or Broberg, or just trying to offer up Jordan Binnington and say, yeah, that price, it's going to be extraordinarily high here, folks. You're going to have to pay up the big bucks if you want the big goalie in net there, and you're going to have to, somehow, again, make it work. Stewart's going to make significantly less than Jordan Binnington, and he's younger, but again, the stats between the two so far this season, it's pretty much the same there, and the Oilers are taking a big risk on a guy like Binnington while paying the price just to see, hey, is he just a little bit better, or was it just a change of scenery that he needed? Was it a systems issue for, both teams and the way that they played? So it's just a whole lot of what ifs at the stage, and it's just speculation from Nick Kypreos. And you're taking a look at the 2-year Binnington, 51st in save percentage with an .895. This is 5-on-5 stats. This isn't all strengths. It's much easier to gauge a goalie with 5-on-5 because, I mean, 5-on-4, of course, yeah, there's going to be a higher chance that they do let something in there. And then Stuart Skinner is 60th in the NHL with an .887, and you compare like the goals against average, 2.68, 2.77 between the two. So again, this would just be a lateral move, not just for the Oilers, but also for both teams. The St. Louis Blues are trying to get a whole lot better. Like, okay, yeah, maybe a Hofer in Skinner tandem would work there. I trust that a whole lot better than a Binnington in Pickard, because of course, Binnington falters, then you have to rely on Calvin Pickard, and other than that, you have a Connor Ingram who's not quite ready in the AHL, so it's just rolling the dice. It's a mystery box of goaltenders. I'll just leave it at that there. But Binnington, again, his stats, nothing impressive to the either. Sure, 28 wins last year for the Blues. Had a 901 in the 7 games against the Winnipeg Jets in the first round. They were that close to eliminating the Jets there until the Jets had that miracle. But a 900 last year, 880 this year just seems to not be getting any better for Jordan Binnington. But the speculation at this point, it all depends on, St. Louis's asking price. Stan Bowman isn't just going to make a move solely to make a move there, even though the Oilers at this point of the season, they're feeling the heat. Panic moves just never work out in the slightest there that happened, with Jack Campbell. The Oilers were losing, both Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen after the 2022 season, so Ken Holland just, threw all his, all of his dice at Jack Campbell, like, okay, yeah, we're going to try to, salvage this, and didn't end up working in the slightest there. That was his fault for missing out on Jacob Markstrom in 2020, but I'm not going to turn into a historian on you here. I just don't think Binnington is the right move at this point here. I'd rather, go after a bigger fish, like Philip Gustafsson out of Minnesota. I mean, with the rise of, Jesper Wallstedt, there could be a chance that the Minnesota Wild could go, okay, yeah, instead of, giving two goalies, big-time money, they can big-time money to Jesper Wallstedt, and Philip Gustafsson would become expendable. That's a guy I would like to go after there with, Jordan Binnington. Third last in goals saved above expected, they're 6.0, and then the other two, Linus Ullmark and Sam Montembeault, another guy, Montembeault, I'd rather have over, Jordan Binnington when it comes to, the goals saved above expected year by year there. This is the first year that Sam Montembeault has really quite faulted with that Montreal team, and, this Montreal team this year was a whole lot better than the past two there, so again, could just be, a change of scenery thing for, any goalie that is struggling right now in the NHL. And as I mentioned, the Oilers would be quite hooped if they did trade Stuart Skinner. I don't have any qualms towards Stuart Skinner. I just don't think he's, the bona fide, number one guy in the team. He works much, much better in a tandem, and if you trade him for Binnington and, Jordan falters, again, you are, relying on a guy who hasn't played consistently since February, Connor Ingram, or, Calvin Pickard, who, other than the one game against Tampa so far this season, hasn't really done a whole lot there. His style is, becoming, very easy to pick apart by the rest of the NHL. And, if Team Canada media, the social media during the Four Nations face-off, wasn't bad enough, just imagine how it would be, with the Edmonton social media. As you can see, after the game against Finland there with Team Canada in the Four Nations face-off, you can see a whole lot of comments towards Binnington, until eventually he made us all eat crow there. But that's just, you give or take with these kinds of goalies. But again, let me know down in the comments what you think about this potential move here. Do you think it's just not worth it for the Edmonton Oilers to pay that much for essentially a what-if, a hypothetical? So I'm very curious to see what you all have to say down in the comments. I know I've been going on and on. Let's get a goalie, and then I see Binnington, and it's like, well, maybe not. So yeah, it's a little hypocritical of me, but I mean, if you're gonna make a move, make sure you are completely 100%, going to be happy with this. Other than hey, I traded for that guy. Hopefully it works out. But again, I'm very curious to see what you all have to say down below, and enjoy the game tonight. Let's go Oilers. Let's get a win tonight against the Dallas Stars. Take care. I'm out.